The Senior Rehab Project is supported by the Game Changers, a group of motivated rehab clinicians that are crushing mediocrity and advancing care for older adults. You can join this group of people and get access to the private Facebook group, the monthly meetup with article discussions, and have a say in the direction of this movement. Get off the sidelines and get involved. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com/Game Changers. Hit me!
This is a Senior Rehab Podcast, the podcast for rehab clinicians that want to better serve older adults.
Hello, y'all. This is Troy Mead, and welcome to Home Health Recharge. And welcome to a joint episode of Home Health Recharge and the State of the SNF. Nicole and I have limited knowledge of each other's settings, and we wanted to have a discussion to learn from each other and talk about opportunities to collaborate and impact care for both of our settings. So without further ado, here is part one of our discussion. Hey, y'all, and welcome to a special episode of Home Health Recharge and
State of the SNF.
And that's
coming
right.
to you together.
That's right. So I'm Troy Mead. I'm the host of Home Health Recharge.
And I'm Nicole Nexon, host of State of the SNF.
And we wanted to come together to have a discussion about how home health and skilled nursing facilities, or SNFs, kind of work together, how we could work better together, and just kind of have a dialogue on how we can help better each other's settings.
Because I have a whole bunch of questions, because I'll be honest, my understanding of what you guys do is a little bit limited. Like I know in theory what you do, but I feel like what I see here in home health, I'm always slightly confused about how you and Dustin are seeing people for so long and how that all works. And I know there's lots of times information I'd love to tell you guys, or the therapists in my community, and I don't know.
Yeah, home health is a mystery. And I think this is good too, because I don't have a lot of skilled nursing facility experience. I mostly come from an outpatient and home health background and acute background as well. Had a little bit of acute, but not much SNF, mostly inpatient rehab in that kind of setting.
Yeah, I did outpatient before, and the only home care that I've done, honestly, was like a pediatric affill. So I assume you guys kind of do the same with larger people.
Yeah.
But less helmets.
So there are home health pediatric therapists as well.
Yeah.
I have a friend that does that. Actually ran into her one time when I was going to see another patient at the house. She was seeing the daughter, and I was seeing the grandfather in the house. It was kind of funny. Yeah. But anyway, we got a bunch of questions for each other. So if you want to start, or you want me to start?
Sure, I will start with you. So first of all, what are your goals in home health? What are you trying to get the patients to?
That's a good question. I think, traditionally, like all therapy, we want to get the patient better. We want to get them back out into the community, hopefully get them independent in their home. But the big thing too, I think, as we're looking at frailty more now in the home health setting, is we want to keep these patients out of the hospital, not just build them up to a certain level that they were at before the hospital, because that level is, where they were at that got them back to the hospital. We want to build up their physiological reserve a little bit to try to get them to stay out of the hospital and hopefully join the community a little bit more. Initially, we do work a lot, though, on keeping them independent and healthy and happy in their home. So I think that kind of goes along with your goals in skilled nursing facility. Am I right? What's your goals?
Yeah. Our goal is to get them back into the home safely, generally. I mean, there's definitely people who we know are going to go right into outpatient when they leave us. That tends to be a little more rare, especially now that we're seeing kind of a more debilitated population, a little more medically fragile these days. But yeah, our goal is to get you back into your home safely. So our big things are transfer stairs. Stairs are huge, making sure you can like I said to you, access your home. Because if you can't access your home, then you're all done. So.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned that your population is getting a little bit more complex medically, as well as, if I'm a little bit more frail. I think we see that too in home health as things have been pushed. We're seeing more of the patient that used to be in the skilled nursing facility now in the home instead. So I think that's where a lot of that frailty push and keeping them out of the hospital is a little bit harder. We have to be a little bit more on top of our game in that setting, in that aspect as well.
Yeah, I think some of that is because we're getting people at a lower level. So, we're getting them better than that. And we can get to the home, but, we don't know what's going to happen after that point. And like you said, we're also worried about hospital readmissions because we know, sometimes we're like, oh, they're going to go home and it's just hoping this is going to work. Let someone get in there because they need another set of eyes on them, please.
Well, hopefully if I use a football analogy, which I'm good at making, hopefully we're the running back that's you're handing the ball off to, and we're going to take that ball and run it into the end zone for y'all.
Oh, that's how it should be, right? You should just be handing them off right along. And on that note, how much conversation do you have with other therapists? Because like I said, we'll get people from the hospital, and a lot of times we have very incomplete charts when we get them. If you get a PT eval, that's normal. If you get a stack from the hospital or any kind of file, that's amazing. That's your day is made. You actually know what's going on. You don't walk in the patient's room and they're like, oh yeah, I have 7 stairs. And then you're like, wait, your chart says 2. Hold on, what's going on here? And that's all that you have is that one piece of paper. Yeah.
I think it depends on where it's coming from and what area you're from. I think you could always want more. Usually where I'm sitting in the area I'm at, we get a little bit more from the hospital than we do from a skilled nursing facility. Usually from a skilled nursing facility is when we get that eval and treat coming out of the patient. Usually we get a little bit more notes on what their last visit was coming out of the hospital.
Okay.
But every now and then we'll get a skilled nursing facility that will give us the last treatment note of where they were at in discharge, their last PT trip or OT treatment note.
No, are you guys getting electronic files for all of this?
It's transcribed into our EMR.
Okay.
There are some, usually that's how it goes. There are some that will talk to each other, and it's getting better, especially with some of the ACO models that are coming out in this area. But for the most part, it's kind of similar, probably how you get it. It's just a handoff somehow.
Yep.
In home health, we mostly work in electronic because we don't go to an office that much to pick up paperwork.
Oh, okay. So you're not even really, I know you guys have said this before in conversations, but you're always talking about the silo, how you're in the silo. Do you really not see your colleagues that often?
It depends on the company on how often, but typically about once a month, we'll get together and have a rehab meeting or a staff meeting or vice versa. Usually a lot of our communication, we're usually in a lot of communication with the nurse that's in on the case or the social worker that's on the case or the OT that's in on the case. Usually it's by phone or by email. I'm more of a phone kind of person. I usually I do better with talking. So I'll call them up and they'll return my call or whatever. And we'll talk about what's going on. But actually other physical therapists, typically I don't have a lot other than just maybe an email on a complicated case that you email blast out to your colleagues or that monthly meeting that you see them all in one place. So it is easy to get in a silo. That's the one thing with home health is you're in this kind of, no man's land when it comes to PT and it's not that bad because, worst case scenario, you can mess up one visit, right? And then go and ask your colleagues, hey, what should have I done?
Yeah.
And, we're going to try something new today on the next visit. But it's typically, so it's not that scary. You can have people there to help you if you need it.
It's so, like I was just saying, like in my last episode, we talked about how the fact that like our gym is so busy that you will just like be in there working and you can see somebody else doing something and you're like, what are you doing? What are you working on over there? And that's a really nice thing that we have. And like we have a lot of room to like pick each other's brains and work and learn and all those things.
Yeah, that's one thing that, that unfortunately, is just the way home health is. We don't get a lot of that, but usually when we do get together, we do a lot of collaboration and talking, about, what are you doing for balance and stuff like that.
So do you feel like that leads to better communication with your colleagues because it's like so limited, or do you feel like it kind of shuts you down on some things?
That's a good question. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? What do you mean?
Right. So like we talk a lot, obviously, like my coworkers and I will talk a lot. And, if we're talking about patients, like we can be really focused, but because we're around each other all the time, like sometimes we'll be talking a lot and it's end up being something ridiculous, like Kim Kardashian, So I guess we had that little bit of extra free time, like at lunch and things, to like chat and kind of like build those bridges and that bonding as a group. And I'm wondering what it's like to have such limited chances to communicate with each other. Like, do you feel like you have that bond where you can like be comfortable expressing things with people and like you can ask everyone questions, or is it a little bit stiffer?
I don't think it's any more stiffer. I mean, yeah, you don't see them as often. But if you're newer, obviously you might be a little bit more uncomfortable, but as time goes on, you kind of get more collaborative with your teammates. A lot of maybe it does keep us a little bit more on focus, but when we do get together, we all like to, cut up and talk about maybe not so much the Kim Kardashians, but everything. But I think that's one of the reasons that I was initially drawn to the senior rehab group was because it gives me a wider community to bounce things off of and, give people advice, that are kind of in the same situation that I am or other home health therapists are, where not that it's just limited by the setting, not necessarily limited by anything that's outside of that.
Okay. That makes sense. Talk to me about something that I'm seeing is Part B companies coming in who are doing care in the home, but it's not necessarily home health. Mm-hmm. How would you describe the difference between like what you do and what they do, in case we're trying to explain that to a patient?
I think for the most part, the treatment doesn't vary much differently. Obviously there's different regulations between how you bill Part A and Part B. Part A, the main thing with that is that they have to be what's considered homebound. Mm-hmm. Which actually is a fairly vague term. Doesn't mean that they have to stay at home constantly.
I was going to say, can't you I heard that you can go to the hairdresser.
Yeah, you can go to the hairdresser. You can go to religious events. You can go to church on Sundays. You can go to the hairdresser. You can go if there's a funeral or something like that. They can go to the funeral. If they have their whole family goes on vacation and they have to go with them because that's where their home is, they can go on a vacation like that.
Really?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought that.
It all varies, but
okay.
Just because they can get out of the house doesn't mean they're not homebound,
Yeah.
You can't go on a vacation every day.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice?
Right. So, and you can't, just because you can't drive doesn't necessarily mean you're homebound either.
Okay.
So, like I said, it's a varying term that some people get kind of scared of, but if you just put common sense to it, you can kind of use it. It's not that scary. Right. So,
so that's more of your line, like the Part B people, they're seeing more of someone who would traditionally be more of an outpatient and not considered homebound.
Yeah, so there's always that little, that point in home health where they're not homebound, but they may not be able to get out to like an outpatient clinic as easily. And some people prefer to have it in the home as well. So that's kind of where Part B would kick in, because, if they're going out every day and they're going to the grocery store every day, you know what I mean?
Yep.
They're going to the senior center, stuff like that, which is great. That's what we want to encourage. But at that point, they're not really going to be, you're not going to just be able to justify that they're homebound anymore. So that's kind of where Part B, they may still need therapy to be safe. But that's kind of where Part B would kick in.
Okay. That makes sense.
So I got a question for you, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. Shoot, Troy.
So I think you kind of dove into it a little bit previously, but kind of but on your side of things with the skilled nursing facility, what's your concept of home health and what we kind of do, and how do you think we could better communicate what we do to the skilled nursing facilities to kind of help?
So here's the thing. I don't know if it's just in my area or we're just not getting good information about what you guys do or what it is really. But generally, when we're doing discharge planning, right? So we're sitting there with our social workers and the family and the patient. We're trying to figure out how we're going to get them home and what kind of care they're going to need. A lot of times what we're told is that home care is 2 to 3 times a week for about 2 weeks, and they're just going to make sure you're safe in the house, and that's all they do. And then once you are safe in the house and you can get in and out of it, then you're going to go to outpatient care. So it's this weird gray area where I hear you and Dustin talk about all these things that you're doing, and I'm like, how are they doing that in 2 weeks? How long are they in there? And what am I missing? What am I missing in my understanding of things?
Yeah. It always depends on what the patient needs, but for the most part, I don't see a lot of 2 weeks. We do see some post joint patients that get 2 weeks and then they're the outpatient. But for the most part, our goal is to, like I said, to make sure that they don't go back to the hospital, that they get their physiological reserve up above where they don't go back into the hospital, as well as, as long as they stay homebound. So we kind of work in, right now we work in 60-day cert periods. So that means we go for a certification of 60 days.
Yep.
So that's kind of they might not need all of that, but, that's kind of where we can kind of do a lot of our impact. So I'd say the typical one will run you anywhere from 30 to 60 days. And then if they still need therapy at that point, say something new came up, they're advancing, they haven't quite met their potential yet, and they could still benefit and they're still homebound, then we could recertify them for another certification period at that point.
You're kind of blowing my mind over here. I didn't know there was a 60-day cert. That's absurd to me. I'm thinking you guys are 2 weeks in and out. And
I only put a little bit of caution on that because of the new HH home health grouper model that came out, a few weeks ago. They're trying to switch in that legislation. They're trying to change the 60-day to 30-day certification period. So it would work the same way. It would just be 30-day certification periods.
Oh, so you guys are starting to feel some of that too, huh?
Yeah. So it's all fun and games.
Yes, it is. It's all fun and games. All right. Yeah. That's so then what would be your goal? If your goal is just not to get them safe in the house, and I know you said get them to a reserve level, but give me an example. You walk into Mrs. Jones's house and what are you looking for?
My goal is, I would go in and talk to her about what her prior level of function was. Mm-hmm. And I'm not just talking about before she went into the hospital. I'm talking about, what's her goal? What's her prior level of function? Where does she want to be? So if her goal, which hopefully will be for the most part, is usually to get back into the community in some aspect.
Okay.
Maybe it's going back to the senior center. Maybe it's going back to church every Sunday. That's a big one.
Okay.
So going back to the hairdresser, like you said.
Yeah.
So that's what my goal I'm going to work on.
Okay. So you're kind of just trying to get them literally back into the community, everything they need to get back into the community. I'm working on everything they need to get into the house, and then you're taking that to the next step.
Yeah, that's hopefully the goal, right?
Okay.
Of course, there will be patients that there won't be able to to meet that goal. Maybe it's not their goal at all. Some of the strokes or something like that, maybe that's not a realistic goal that they want. Maybe they just want to be independent in their home. Maybe they just want to be independent with their caregiver, or, with their caregiver to come in and be independent with them. So we'll work around that kind of goal. So whatever the patient's goal is, but if they have that potential to get back into the community, that's kind of our overall main goal that we'd like to, just like you, we want to move them on. Hopefully, try to push ourselves out of a job,
Yeah, exactly.
When you don't need me anymore, that's when I'm happy. So
sometimes I joke that we're like the only job who tries to make themselves irrelevant. I want you to not need me anymore. That's my goal.
Exactly. Yeah. And, they kind of look at you. I mean, some of my best, I think I see it too, is like, I had one patient that I was working with him, on some really high level balance stuff. And his goal was, to get back out in the community. And like, he was like amazed of all the stuff you were doing. He's like, this is home, this is home therapy. His wife was like, she was funny. She's like, yeah, I tell all my friends about this. They need to know that you could have a therapist come to your home and work with you. Great. You're doing so much wonderful things for my husband. It's like, you're doing, it's like that, like, blew their mind that you could get them up and do all this high level balance, step ups and sidestepping and balance stuff with them to try to, because his main thing was balance and lower extremity weakness, where he couldn't get out of his chair. So we did a lot of sit to stands and stuff like that. So got him to arms crossed, 10 sit to stands in 30 seconds. So
nice.
That was kind of his goal. So, he was getting towards the non-homebound side towards the end. And it was kind of like, here's your home program, keep up with it. If you can, join the gym, yada, yada, yada.
Oh, speaking of home programs, and we kind of touched on this, like, what do you want to see in a home program from a SNF setting? Like, what is your ideal? You walk in, the patient has this HEP. What does it look like? Like Troy's dream HEP.
I guess the first part of the dream would be that it was there, and that they remembered to bring it with them.
Mm-hmm. That's huge.
Yeah. So, that's kind of a hard question. I guess my want would be is that if it's appropriate for that patient at that time when they come to me, mm-hmm. It may change a little bit from when they get out of the facility to when they're coming to home. But for the most part, if that's kind of where their max was at that point, then that's kind of where I would like to see it at. And then that way I can build upon it. So, I don't have to, if there's a lot there and it's appropriate, then I don't have to add a lot at that point. I can focus on doing some more of my tests, a little bit more of my coaching, about activity and trying to more functional kind of things, adding some of that sit to stand stuff. That's what their goal is. They can't stand up or get out of the chair. Mm-hmm. That's usually a big one. So we usually do a lot of sit to stands. But if they're beyond that, then we do a lot of balance stuff to try to get them out of their home and stuff like that. So something I can build on to that's appropriate where they're at.
All right. Here's my next question. How many exercises are they actually doing at home?
With you? Or,
like if we're sending them home with a home exercise program and say we're trying to keep it like 6 exercises, right? So like a page. How many of those do you think they are actually doing?
If it's a motivated person, usually all of them.
Okay.
But usually that's going to be, it depends on the patient, but usually that's going to be your limit is the 6. So usually when I come in and they have a lot that they're doing already, I'll substitute mine and say they've gone past it. Say you did seated hip. So I like to do a lot of functional stuff, a lot of, get them up off their butt kind of things and moving around because as long as they're appropriate for it at that point. So they may not have been as appropriate in the facility. They're still doing a lot of sitting down stuff. I'll get them up and do a little bit more of the standing, more of the balance stuff, incorporate some of the, the fun stuff that I like to call into it. Because, standing hip flexion and hip abduction is only fun to a certain point,
I mean, I try to get them to throw stuff at people while they're doing it.
Oh yeah, that's the fun stuff. Yeah,
that is. Yeah, that's something that, going back to like my setting. What I like about it too is there's always other people there, so we can make it amusing. So we can play. Like sometimes we'll play games. Like we'll have people like play. The OTs are pretty famous for doing like card games and anything that involves like standing balance plus some thinking skills, some like fine motor stuff. They have a lot of that. But I mean, we'll have patients play catch with each other, modify the surface that they're standing on. We'll have them play catch with a tech. We'll have them throw. I like to have them throw stuff at people because I feel like some of them are a little bit frustrated. So I'll be like, here's some socks. Throw this at this person. They're going to try to catch them. Like we're going to stand up and you're going to put one foot on this foam pad and you're going to chuck this stuff at this person's head. And generally I can get like a laugh out of that. There's someone who's like cranky because they're stuck in a building that's not their own and they have a roommate who snores or watches TV until the wee hours of the morning. Or
I think one of the advantages that we can do to make things fun in the home setting is make it a little bit more functional in how they are with their real life. Not that y'all don't, but say, we're not just going to walk from this room to the other one. You're going to carry a cup like you were getting in a cup of water in the, to take to the living room like you do every day. Or, you do the laundry, or going to take your full laundry basket, make it a little bit harder on you. See how you do. Yeah. So make it a little bit more functional with them, break things up a little bit instead of just doing, we're going to walk back and forth here until you get tired.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend people throw things at their spouses or family members, like if they're not game for it. Take these socks and chuck them at your family.
Yeah, you might get some complaints on that one.
Yeah, at least the other therapists and the aides, they know what's coming.
Your manager, like,
they've signed up for it. So what do you guys want to know? What are your big questions about skilled nursing therapists? Like, first of all, what do you think happens in there?
What do I think happens?
Yeah, like what do like home health therapists think? Like I told you, I think you guys go in for like 2 weeks. So what do you think happens in like a skilled nursing?
You want the
stereotypical? Yeah. Give me like your most ridiculous stereotypical whatever.
So that's the first half. Check out the second part next week on the State of the Sniff. The same SRP time and the same SRP channel. Until then, don't forget to stay funky.
Hit me! Thank you for listening to the Senior Rehab Podcast. If you only listen to these podcast episodes, you are missing out on 90% of the Senior Rehab Project. Hop on over to seniorrehabproject.com where you can join the movement that's advancing care for older adults. You can join for free or become a part of the Game Changers where you can get some free gear and access to our monthly meetup. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com. I appreciate y'all, and I'll talk with you soon. But in the meantime, do not forget to stay funky.